Right, hi guys, Handiwork here. Time to get on with the assembly video for this ECS 10 kit. Now, one thing just before we start you need to be aware of, there are two body shapes for this kit. There's this one, which I did all the work on, and as you can see I've partially prepared ready for the kit, and there's this one, which looks exactly the same, except for one tiny little thing, and it's this lump down here. Right, that lump, see how it's not flush with the rest of that? Whereas this one, it's flush. So keep that in mind when you're looking for a ECS 10 to do this. This one is the easier body to work on, the lumpless one. Let's call it the chin, no double chin on it, okay? So just keep that in mind, and we will get to what we can do about that one later if that's all you got. Just a quick overview of the hardware you need for this kit. As you can see, there's not much. The whole reason for designing this kit was something really easy. Somebody could do it. You could do a major cosmetic upgrade, but really simply. So I've tried to keep that in mind. So what we've got is a 6mm screw, 95 long. That just goes straight in this hole in the butt. Gives you a sling mount. That's all it's for, but just cool. Looks great. And you just glue that in. So one 6mm by 90mm bolt. You've got three 30mm M5 5mm machine screws, lock nuts, and the one for the magazine catch has a hexagonal recess on the other side this nut can fit in, or you can put a luck nut on it as well, and that's all you need for the magazine catch and the pistol grip to hold on. You need 10 assorted Nerf screws, and they are just little things like holding the butt plate on, holding, 4 of them are used to hold the Picatinny rail on, and a couple more in other places, which I'll show you as we go through. That's all you need. It can be any kind, any type. All you do when you make your hole, you just got to make the hole big enough for the screw to fit in. Okay, you've got a spring, 15mm long, fairly high tension. It came out of the kit, I'm sure, but I just can't remember where, and I've ripped apart 2 others and I still can't find where it's located. But basically, you want a 15mm spring that's got a pretty good bit of tension on it. That's the one that goes into the magazine catch. You've got the return spring from the pusher in the kit, which is here. That comes out. Keep that and a little washer flanged screw, and you use that as your return spring for your trigger. And I'll show you how that gets installed when we put it together. And that's it. That's all the hardware you need. You probably got that lying around at home. If not, a quick trip to the hardware store cost you, what? I think this cost me 80 cents. This one, that's the only bit I had to actually buy. That's all you need in the way of hardware. So you've got your kit, you pull it apart, you pull out the trigger group. Right. So the first thing you do is you unscrew this grey handle and take that off. And throw it away if you want. Melt it down for Nerf glue, whatever. Then get your craft saw or your Dremel and cut across just above this line here. Let me get it a bit closer and get my U-Butte multi-tool pointer. So just above this line here, right across. Cut across that, and then get a file or sandpaper or your Dremel and grind out these walls a bit. This one here, one in the middle, one at the front. Not through this, just through these upright walls. Right, 1, 2, 3, either side. And what you're left with is something that looks a bit like that. Absolutely disgusting and hideous and really rough, but you're not going to see it. Okay? So that's that. Second thing you do is you grind off or cut off this protrusion here. Take that off because it requires that for the buttstock to fit. So I've made it solid. So because that's solid, that lump of plastic has to go. And if you try and fit it on and it's not fitting, so if you try and fit it on and you're getting like a bit of a space, it's because you haven't got all the plastic. This thing slides down, comes right down here. You've got to get it all out. Just cut it off with your, again, with your Dremel or your saw, just straight across there, straight across running on the flat. Won't hurt it. And just get it off. It goes right down, as you can see, virtually past the end top of this bit. That's so rough, but when you put this on, mess disappears. Okay, so that's what you need to do. This bit here at the bottom I cut out, don't worry about that. That was something else I made a mistake on. Right, another area you've got to cut out is just at the end, just in this little gap. These things are straight down. So I've just taken a little chunk either side. That just allows this protrusion on the buttstock, this ridge, to slide in once you get it in place. It makes a nice neat fit, and it also acts as side-to-side stability. So it's just a little bit of plastic that's blocking up those corners. Just grind it out with your Dremel, cut it out with the saw, that sort of thing. That's all you have to do. Right, so once you've got your spring in, get your M5 bolt. That's what I'm using, 5mm. So slide your spring in, and in the back of the magazine, the butt there, you can see a little square indentation that the spring fits into. So put it in that indentation, then push it in, and put your 5mm screw through. And you see how much spring tension that's under? Now on the other side of this, I've got a recess for a nut to fit. Just put it in there, push it down, and get a screwdriver and tighten things up. So holding the nut like that, just tighten this in. It'll grab the nut, pull it in, and when it gets reasonably tight, you're good. You can also use a lock nut if you want it in there, an M5 lock nut. Right, so once you've got that in place, before you put any screws in, get a magazine, and as you put it in, watch the magazine catch, that it clicks. All right? You want it there, you want it to unlatch only when you want it to. Now for that reason, because these bodies are a little bit different in dimensions, I've provided an extra long magazine catch. So you might put it in and you put the magazine in and it won't even go in. That is for your benefit, so you can just sand and shave this down. The top half of this magazine catch is 100% fill, so it won't matter if you grind through the surface, it's all plastic. And you only need to take off like 1/2 mil at a time till you find a point where, with the spring tension you're using and your magazine catch and the geometry of your particular blaster, it works. Okay? Easy. So now that I know my mag catch works, I'm going to screw this in. Now, cutting off the top of this, I've lost one of my diagonal screw holes. I normally had one screw either side. So I'm using 2 at the bottom, and it works fine. There's no movement, no issues. Just screw them straight in. And these are just chipboard screws or countersunk woodwork screws or any sort of screws you want to use. It's pretty straightforward. So those go straight in, and they're nice and tight. No movement at all. Mag still works. Oops, put it in the right way. There we go. Now, the holes I drilled through there with my drill, 2.5mm. Okay? Done. So once that's on, the next step, slide your plastic rear cover on. Now this is got a gigantic inside Picatinny rail, so all you have to do, put it on at a little bit of angle, get it under the front there, and just slide it on, and it'll just go click. There you go. Now you can place that anywhere you want. When you put on the front cover and you put on the Picatinny rail, they'll screw it down and lock them both in place. And speaking of the front cover, here it is. Excuse the colour, all I had was red at the time, but it works. Same thing, just goes on over the front, slides along, click. Right, done, simple. Right, now for the Picatinny rail, the front is the side that's got the 3 holes closest to one end, and there's 2 holes at the other end. So what you do, or what I do, you can do it any way you want, but what I do, I found the centre here, I've pre-drilled the hole. As you can see, I've pre-drilled plenty of holes because I've been messing around with this thing for weeks. So just screw that in gently, just until it's snug. I mean, if you wanted to glue it on, I suppose you could. Now, on the subject of drilling holes through this stuff, I recommend a pin vise if you have to, but an absolute necessity is to heat it up. So I've got a small gas torch here, and I'm just going to heat up my pin vise, and I'm not going to try and drill through with it hot. I'm just going to make a mark or even push through. There we go. So there's my mark. Now, because that was done with heat, there is a little burr there, so I need to clear that off. Just tip of a X-Acto craft knife will take it off. There we go. Now, before I put that on and screw in, I'm going to screw the screw in from without the Picatinny rail there. Yep, that's good. So now I can put it over the top, whack it through the Picatinny. Alright, so you could do the same there, and same there if you wanted to. And I would recommend 1, 2, 3, 4 probably. Probably the best thing for it. So, make sure I haven't damaged anything else. Okay. Right, on to the home stretch. Very simple. Pistol grip. This part is pretty different to the original, as you can tell. So as you can see, I've cut straight across the top of that original there on that line. Chop that part off, right? Then I've chopped off some stuff at the front here. These are all areas you have to clear, so you get it looking like that. As you can see, just follow along that line, that recess there through the middle of it. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And cut off that little bit at the bottom too. So that's gone, and that part's there's gone. Like so. Just cart along like that. Make it go away. Alright, so once you've cut those and you've got that, you then need to modify your trigger. And the trigger modification is pretty heavy duty, but here's the original trigger. Let me just zoom in a bit. And I'll include some close-up photos so you can see. So that's the original trigger, and this is what you turn it into. All right? So you see you're cutting off an awful lot, but basically, if you look at this ridge around this hole is just there. So what you're doing is you're putting a scoop there to hold the spring like a hook, and just cutting up to there. So everything there goes away. This goes away, and that's it. You just got to get all this muck off the side that stick in the way of the slide. It'll just impede its movement, and you want that to go away. So it's pretty basic, as you can see. Put it over the top. You can see how much you've got to cut off. Okay? But as I said, I will put some photos in. Okay, so once you've cut your trigger, you're ready to do the assembly. And it's pretty easy. First, get this bit again and just grind off a little bit in the corner here. If you're putting in a rev trigger and wiring, you need space for the wire to run there, and you need space for the wire to run just here. That's all you have to do. That'll give you space. So I'm going to use the original micro switch, which I would use anyway. It's there. Put it in its housing, right? So you got it there. What you do is you run it down there, under that little gap, and up there. Then put this in place. And there's your wire sticking out the top. Right? So just there. So that, you know, would be a bit longer, but you get the idea. So you're ready to go there. Now, the next thing is, I've used the rev trigger, but I've cut it down. I cut the great big block off the top. I want to use the rev trigger and that because it works. So I've got my rev trigger, I've got my locking block, but cutting that top off means there's nothing impeding the trigger, so you can pull the trigger whenever you want. All right? So put that there. Get it in the right place. Move that down. So push in the rev trigger, hits the button for the micro switch, and you're ready to go. Put your trigger in place and put your half on top. So you're ready to shut this up. So you can put your screws in, preferably in the actual holes, and screw them down. Right, so we've got our 4 screws in. Now, there is an issue with a little bit of movement here, Now I've attempted to use this screw post and put a screw through and hold it together. Not gripping, I can't find a long enough screw. If you can find, but I've never really had a problem, because when this is like this, it sort of protects it, holds it together, and you've got two big bolts here holding this together, so it's not going to be an issue. Right, so to mount the pistol grip, get your little washer-headed screw, put it through the hole on the return spring, like so. So you can see that. Oop, there we go. And screw it into that hole. Now, that hole is a little bit too big for this screw, but it still works because the way I've designed it, it can't fall out, so I'm not worried. But on the part you get, it'll be a bit tighter, so you can just screw it in. So you've got it like that, and you see how the spring hangs down? So hold the piece like this. I've got the spring hanging out underneath. You got your pistol grip there, and there's the hook with the trigger, and just hook it on. Pull it back and slot it in place. Check it works, which it does. Get your first M5 by 30mm bolt and screw it through the hole. And I do mean screw, I don't mean push, because as I said, there's very tight tolerances, and you might want to screw these through this first just to get the thread going, because it takes a while if you don't. So with the magic of TV, I will just skip ahead. So as it comes through this side, you can see it's a bit off center, and that's deliberate to give this bit extra strength. And it's not a problem. What you do, put your finger in there, hold that down, press really hard, and just continue to screw through, and the bolt will cut its way through the plastic. And it's only going to be a little bit, and it's not going to make it weaker or anything like that. So once you're through, you've got your bolt sticking out, put on your nylon lock nut. Now they're almost down, and it's starting to turn. So what I'm going to do is put the spanner on that side and hold it, and just give it a couple of quick turns. And that's it. So I'll do the same for the other one. Now this one is a little bit different in that the screw goes across the top of the spring, and you'll hear it going across the top of the spring. See that? But what you do, put your thumb in there, pull it back, and it's still, you can still hear it, but it's a lot less stress on the spring and the screw, and just screw it all the way through. All right, and test the trigger. Still works a treat. Can't even hear it touching the screw now. Next thing is you've got your pistol grip ready to go on. Now that slides on, and this recess here fits into this cutout here in the old foregrip. So this platform here actually rests on this bar and holds it closed. You don't need this screw anymore. So this recess is 24 mils in from this top edge, right? And it's approximately 15 mils either side. So roughly what you're looking at, a cutout like that, and straight down there. Now I recommend you unscrew this in parts to cut it out. This base has to come out. In fact, I'll show you what happens. And you get it in part, pull it apart like that, slide that off, you don't need that, and then cut out that area, this area. So 22 mils down, 15 mils across here. But do not cut that out, okay? Because you need that for one, for your screw post for strength, and two, it sits under there, and the pistol grip rail holds the thing shut. Now that's reasonably easy. You can do that with a saw or a Dremel or whatever. And once you've got that done, when you cut it out, you might see in there, coming down from above, see if I can get it in picture here, coming down from above there, there's a little support bit. you might need to take a little shaving of that off, but don't do it first. Just cut out this section, so 22 millimeters from that front edge there, that front bend down, 15 across, and that just goes as well. Okay, that's all you've got to do. So once you've done that, you actually end up with a piece like that, and you put your batteries in, slide that in, and then slide this on, and it just, there's a little trick to it, and it just clicks in. Everything's pretty solid. Now you have a hole there which is molded into this piece, and that's just for you to put a drill through. So just drill through that hole that's already molded there and just chuck in a little Nerf screw, whatever you've got lying around. It's just to hold. So once you've got that screw in and that's held in place, you can then mount your Recon 2 barrel. Just put that on. Before you put that on, you have to put this on. It's just what I call a barrel spacer. It has a little step that faces to the rear. Just put it over there. Sits on that little notch there. Put your Recon 2 barrel on and your Recon 2 adapter. That goes on there. And the Recon top cover is this one again, red, sorry, but that's all I had at the time. And it has a single screw which goes straight through into the big orange sight, which this surely is not, because I cut it off, so I've had to replace it with a bit of epoxy putty. So that goes there. Okay, so that's there. So once you've got that on, you can very easily change it out if you don't have a Recon barrel and you only have a dual rail barrel. That's the only two I've made to fit this kit. I'm not going to go and make all barrels, although I could. So you take out that one, take off your Recon barrel, and put on your dual rail barrel, leaving the spacer on. Click that in place, and the adapter for this does the same thing. Now this one's only a prototype, so it doesn't go all the way down, but the others do, and you just put a screw straight through there into the front of this, holds it in place. And there is a top cover, but unfortunately it's still printing, but you get the idea. Same thing goes in, and its screw is mounted low, so it goes in the front of the Picatinny rail right there. So that's the stage we're at. Now put the thumb hole grip on. Now on the new production version, this, as you can see, has a slot in it, and on this one the front holes are gone and there is a protrusion on the inside that this just slots into. That is simply just to eliminate two screws, so, and it gives you a nice tight fit. And so you just put a hole in there on either side and put a screw in. So I'll do that and get back to you. Right, so I've just drilled a hole in there, and I've just got a tiny little, I don't know what it is, self-tapping metal screw or wood screw or something, and just whack it in. We've got a screw on either side holding the thumb grip in, really nice and tight. Everything still works. So the last thing we need to do, put the buttstock on. You could put this on as soon as you've got that step done. I just do it last for no reason at all. So put the buttstock on. You have a bit of distance which will allow you to position it wherever you want, and to get it in a nice position, you know, level. You don't want it really crooked and looking silly. Just get something that has a uniform width, like say the back of my saw. Push it in, and there you go. Now I use just ordinary everyday Nerf screws, as I said in the hardware bit of this video, just these sort of things with the round head. And again, I'll do the whole heating a drill bit and pushing it through. From the outside. So there we go. All finished. Put your magazine in. Check that it locks in place. Put your magazine in the right way. Check that it locks in place, that the magazine catch moves when you do it. And you're done. Push the magazine catch, make sure it comes out when you want it to come out, and it does. There we go. You can then put whatever devious looking scope you want on the Picatinny rail and go and cause nerf mayhem. That's it, guys. The build video for the ECS 10, to be henceforth known from this point in time as the Valkyrie. And you can get it from Foamdemic. Order with her if you're in the US, order with me if you're in Australia. I'll put the links to the Etsy pages below. Thanks, guys. And thank you very much for your patience. I know a lot of people have been wanting this. Here it is. See ya.